equipable items which had weird or unique effects in vanilla WoW. And at number 10, we have the loofah.
Let me see if I watched this before, okay? I don't know if I did or not. I'm gonna just copy paste this. Asmongold reacts. Okay, I didn't. I thought so. Yeah, I did not watch this one. All right. I don't remember if I did or not, but it looks like I didn't. Okay, let's take a look at it.
This was a trinket which had the effect to remove one bleed effect.
This is really good.
Seeing as trinkets were kind of rare and hard to get,
it's only a 3-minute CD.
You didn't really lose much for having this equipped. And using it to get rid of a bleed from a warrior or rogue in PvP, or the odd raid or dungeon boss who applied a bleed, was pretty good. So it was a unique trinket with an effect that was pretty useful, despite the fact it gave no other stats. Then again, a lot of trinkets in vanilla didn't really have stats on them either, and would sometimes only provide a unique effect. The trinket was easy to get too. All you had to do was complete one quest in the Syrian Gorge, which required you to go around and kill 20 dinosaurs. And there originally was no limit on the bleed it would remove. So when the Burning Crusade came out, and one of the bosses in the new raid, Morose and Karazhan, used a hard-hitting bleed as one of its mechanics, tanks were using this vanilla WoW trinket in order to remove it. So they added a restriction to the trinket, where it would only remove a bleed effect applied from a target level 60 or below.
Wait, really?
Because outside of this trinket, there are no ways to remove bleeds outside of a dwarf's racial ability stone form, and straight up immunity spells, which remove everything.
Holy
bleeds are one of the few common dot types which can't be removed by healers.
My guild was trash at the beginning of Burning Crusade, so I don't remember that happening. Like back then, like my guild was so fucking bad. We didn't even worry about Moros. We're like, man, maybe one day we'll be able to get fucking Moros down. But we never even got a chance for that, man.
Although in Legion, they did add a homage item in the game called the Feathered Loofah. It was an item that you could create with First Aid that had the effect to heal for a little bit and remove bleed effects, but only while you're on the Broken Isles. And with the removal of First Aid in BFA, this item was just added to tailors along with all other First Aid crafts. And at number 9, we have the 6 Demon Bag.
This
was an item with an on-use effect, which would have 1 of 6 random effects. 3 of its effects were to shoot out a spell. 2 of its effects were CCs. Its last effect was to summon a Fell Hunter pet for you for a little bit.
Wait, what?
Of its 6 effects, its 3 spell effects were a lot more common than the other 3.
That's fucking awesome.
Every time you used it, it had a higher than normal chance to shoot a fireball,
holy shit,
crossbolt, which would slow the target for 5 seconds as well, or a chain lightning, which would chain you to other targets. And then its other 3 more rarer effects was a cyclone-like ability, which was just a straight up stun, a polymorph, and then the Fell Hunter pet summon. Since trinkets were pretty rare, and you had a good chance for its effects to just do damage, and it only had a 3-minute cooldown, this item, despite having a weird effect, wasn't half bad as far as DPS trinkets go. Obviously, there were much better ones in the game, but if you had this one, it at least had some fun effects on it if it didn't do damage.
Dude, I didn't even know anything about that.
The Gnomish Mind Control Cap.
Oh, this was the Vertnoon fucking hat.
To possibly mind control an enemy
I remember
target,
this shit.
Which would then allow you to control them like a Warlock or Hunter pet. But if you already had a pet out, you would have to dismiss your pet first in order to use this ability. But there was also a few catches to it. After patch 1.11, you could only use this item on targets out of combat. Also, you had to be an engineer with a high engineering skill in order to use the item.
That's whenever they took out all the fun.
Despite its name, though, you did not need to be a Gnomish engineer. Any engineer could use this helmet. The helm had a 30-minute cooldown, so not something that could be used very often. And as probably the biggest caveat to this thing, it had a chance to fail, which was pretty common with a lot of engineering
I wonder
items.
what would happen if it fails.
That's still kind of the case today.
Do you become like
if this thing failed, it had a chance to just not do anything, or mind control yourself and put you under the control of the mob you were attempting to mind control. And because engineering items had a
that's so badass, dude. That is so badass. And, I mean, really, it is so fucking cool that they had that back in the game then. I used to love that kind of shit. I don't know what happened. We already saw it. We never watched this. Trust me, if we had watched it, there'd be 8 different React videos about it. That's how I check if I've seen it before. I have not seen this video before. I don't know why people keep saying that. Yeah, that's fucking awesome, man. It's not back in the day. We have it today. That is true. That is very true.
Pretty high chance to fail in vanilla WoW. This was not used as a reliable form of CC, and instead, just kind of a fun item with occasional niche uses. Number 7, the Horned Viking Helmet. This helmet had the on-use effect to charge an enemy and incapacitate them for 30 seconds, but it would also knock you down and stun you for a bit. A 30-second CC is actually an incredibly useful effect, to the point where a lot of warriors would farm the helmet in order to use it in PvP. And of course, had some niche PvE uses as well.
I remember, I think it was in like Kip's dueling tournament where you let warriors use this helmet for like an extra charge. I was like, yeah, right, dude. Like, I wish that warriors had, I think in vanilla, if they had one extra charge, or like if they had heroic leap in vanilla, I think that they would be better, right? And that, if I could give warriors one ability in vanilla WoW, it would be heroic leap. I think that's what would be the most fair thing. I don't know, react to any. Hi, Izzy. Hi. Yeah, I mean, they're good. No, just give them one heroic leap, and then that way they're not going to just get so completely broken. No. Just one extra leap. That's all. There's just one extra leap.
CC were heavily used in dungeons and raids. The helmet itself dropped from Eric the Swift in Uldaman, and is only available to Horde players, as the NPC is friendly to Alliance.
Yep.
And since it was located inside Uldaman, a not max level dungeon, warriors could solo this place to grab it if they were smart about it, as the item dropped from one of 3 of the Lost Vikings. So if you attacked one of them, the other 2 were going to join in.
Yep.
Soloing lower level dungeons back in vanilla WoW was a lot harder than it is today.
Yeah, it's a joke.
Even if you had about 20 levels on the place. And since the helmet had such a good effect, after vanilla WoW, they gave the helmet a little restriction that it could only be used on targets level 60 and lower, basically. Number 6, Skull of Impending Doom.
Everybody knows about this one.
That has the effect to increase your run speed by 60% for 10 seconds, which was a pretty good effect back when not all classes had speed increasers.
Yep.
And the few that did had incredibly long cooldowns or restrictions placed on them.
This is the Swifty weapon right here.
And the offhand only had a 3-minute cooldown, but when used, it would deal damage to you and then drain mana over its duration. So the offhand worked very similar to modern day Burning Rush, a talent that warlocks have which increase their run speed but deals damage to them while it's active. If anything, Burning Rush was probably inspired by the Skull of Impending Doom. In order to get this offhand, you had to complete a 4-part quest chain,
that's actually very true.
Had you go to a dungeon and around the world killing things. The quest would start in the Badlands from a dwarf, who would send you to Uldaman to grab a tablet, which, despite the quest text, didn't actually require you to go inside Uldaman, as the tablet was located right outside the entrance.
Shit.
Then you would go to another quest giver in either Ironforge or Undercity, depending on your faction, who would then send you to Dustwallow Marsh, Stranglethorn, and the Alteric Mountains to collect 3 items from 3 elite mobs.
Yep.
Then you'd be sent back to the dwarf in the Badlands and you'd receive your skull. Even with the drawbacks of the skull, it was still a pretty useful item just for the speed increase it gave.
My mom still has this from vanilla
WoW, niche
on her old
uses
character.
in PvP, on classes that can equip an offhand normally. For the Burning Crusade, the item received an update to drain 60% of your mana and health when you used it, instead of a fixed amount like it did in vanilla WoW.
Yep.
This was most likely done so it couldn't be abused by the new health values that players had, keeping its drawback as an actual drawback to it. And then in the Cataclysm, you can no longer obtain this item. So if you have one, it still works like the TBC version to this day.
Yep.
And at number 5, we have the Freezing Band.
The Hobbs way of
pulling, dude. This was a world drop epic ring that had a 1% chance whenever you were hit to freeze the target for 5 seconds. And inflict a little bit of frost damage. It also gave some frost resist and increased the damage of your frost spells. Now, the unique thing about this item is absolutely that on-hit chance of freezing a target for 5 seconds, as this freeze was treated basically like a stun, and would just freeze them in a block of ice for 5 seconds when activated.
Do you guys want to watch that after this, dude? Assuming this shit's still fucked, man. Yo, we should go watch the Hobbs video, man. Like, that was such a good fucking video.
Had no internal cooldown, and did stack with another Freezing Band. As this ring was not unique equip, you could have 2 of them on at the same time to double the chances of getting freeze procs.
2%.
The only thing that might have prevented this from happening, though, was how you obtain this ring.
They were expensive.
It was a world drop epic item which is about the hardest way to obtain an item in the game.
Yeah.
As you just have to get really lucky to obtain this from a random drop. So usually, the best way to obtain one was to just buy it off the auction house for a crap ton of gold.
I am accepting gold,
then,
by the way, guys.
There was no guarantees that there would be one on the auction house. But if you were very rich and you played on a server with these being sold, you could obtain 2 of them and have fun with your enemies randomly being stunned whenever they hit you. And since the targets were treated as frozen, there was lots of synergy with frost mages and their shatter talent. And at number 4, we have the Thunder Brew Boot Flask. This was another trinket item, which had 2 unusual effects tied to it.
250 damage. That's not a big deal.
The first being, when you used it, you would breathe fire for 5 seconds.
Like Onyxia.
Which would give you a nice little AoE. And I've heard reports that this AoE could be used without a target, and wouldn't aggro nearby guards if used on low-level players in towns. Its second effect is that it would get you drunk, which could be a good or bad thing, depending on who you ask. And all on a measly 30-minute cooldown.
It's a bad thing.
Vanilla WoW
Drinking is bad.
Incredibly long cooldowns on a lot of their items for almost no reason.
Yeah, there's like one random item. It's like a 45-minute cooldown to increase your strength by 6 for 5 minutes. A 45 minutes. It's like, who the fuck thought of that? Like, that was the dumbest thing, man.
That was kind of the name of the game back then. Everything had long cooldowns in other games. And if anything, WoW's cooldowns were pretty reasonable in comparison. You rarely see abilities or items with cooldowns this long today, when that was kind of the norm back then, as you may have noticed with some of the other items on the list. Now, the way to acquire this item required a lot of legwork. You had to complete a 5-part cross-continental journey in order to complete the quest chain, which awarded this trinket.
I'm not going to get this item.
So let's go over it. First part of the quest chain required you to talk to a dwarf in Westfall.
Yeah, I'm not going to get this stupid ass item. There's no way I'm going to waste my time with this bullshit.
Westfall was a low-level zone, so
it's a bullshit ass item.
You found this on your own while leveling normally, and also unlikely you found this quest when you're at max level, since the quest didn't appear for low-level players or max-level players. And the quest giver himself is kind of hidden in an out-of-the-way location. This is kind of a secretive quest to accept. Anyways, the first part of the quest required you to go to Stranglethorn Vale, in the middle of a Naga camp, in order to get some holy...
Guys, it seems like we're able to load back in for at least probably 35 seconds before we disconnect again. So if you're part of the group, please load back in. Smitty, you've got 1 spot, and then we're still waiting on our last slot. Okay, make your way over to BRD. Or sorry, EBRS.
Spring water. The second part of the quest chain required you to get 3 separate materials. One located in the Swamp of Sorrows, another located in Tanaris, and the last all the way in the hinterlands. Then you'd be asked to get 1 true silver bar, which you could just buy off the auction house. And after that, you'd be sent on another journey, this time to Feralis in order to get a branch. And then for the final part of the quest, you'd be sent to the Syrian Gorge in order to get a piece of oak.
Oh!
Then, after you return to Westfall, you'd finally get your trinket.
Wow.
There's some speculation that this was meant to be a quest for players newly obtaining their mounts, to give them a reason to run around the world with their newfound mounts.
That's actually really smart.
That's why it had them go to like 5 different parts of the world.
That's really smart.
Speculation that was most likely entirely correct, as in the WoW Diary book, a book in which one of the WoW vanilla developers talks about what went into making the game. They do talk about how they really wanted cross-continental quest for all classes at level 40, so they'd have a reason to use their new mounts. This quest is a good example of what they had planned.
See, that's so smart. Like that's so smart, because like if you make a cross-continental quest at level 40, if you just spend all your time in dungeons, you don't really find a reason to, like, do you need a mount if you live in Scarlet Monastery? No. So giving people reasons to go out there and actually see, like, oh wow, I need my mount so I can do this faster. That's what it was all about, man. And it's actually really crazy to think like all the different ways that they figured this shit out. Like I'm so fucking glad about that. Like, I mean, like, classic WoW, it's just literally those guys were fucking geniuses. Like, I mean, they were fucking geniuses. Okay, let's go.
And for every class, instead of just a few of them getting quests like this. Number 3, the Spectral Essence. This trinket has the effect to allow you to interact with ghosts inside of one town. This trinket was pretty standard for quest-like items and special effects, as trinkets in vanilla WoW were not very commonplace, and good trinkets were pretty rare. Your trinket spot was usually fine to equip something there without hindering your character all that much.
Okay.
In order to get the trinket, you had to complete a quest, which would send you into Skullomance to kill a rare elite.
Oh yeah, we were gonna
burn
do
2
this.
bodies. Then you'd get this trinket, which would allow you to talk to the folks of Ciridaro, and even buy some unique items from a vendor, which could only be seen with this trinket or the Eye of Divinity, a trinket only priests could equip that dropped from a boss in Molten Core. The trinket didn't have any stats or do anything else. This is basically just the precursor to quest items, which did special things. Blizzard would usually just put them on trinkets that you had to equip. And at number 2, we have the DARKMOON card Twisty Nether. This was a DARKMOON trinket which had the effect, which would only have a chance to activate when you died. Basically, it gave you a 10% chance to resurrect after dying with 20% health and mana. And when the trinket rezzed you, it worked kind of like having a soul stone on you, in which you could choose to accept a resurrection or not. Now, seeing as this trinket only had a 10% chance, it was not at all reliable, and not really worth the trinket slot in raids or dungeons. Its uses were basically just for solo content to occasionally
That's for my
save
BIS.
you a run back to your corpse. Or if you literally didn't
That's
have
my
any
BIS,
trinket,
dude.
it at least had the potential to be sometimes useful in raids or dungeons.
Holy
Now,
shit.
this trinket didn't actually see very much use until arenas were added to the game in the Burning Crusade, in which people would equip this trinket in order to sometimes come back to life in an arena match, which could single-handedly help you win the game. Usually, after one person dies in arena, the team which secured the kill will basically treat it as if they've already won, and maybe let their guard down a little bit. So seeing someone res back up real quick to join the fight is all it could really take in order to turn the tide of the battle back in your favor.
Yeah, I guess so.
And as far as I know, this trinket still works in arenas today. Maybe. I tried looking it up and couldn't really find any confirmation, but I also didn't find anything saying that it didn't. And
imagine somebody using that in like BlizzCon or something. God, dude, that'd be so funny. And like, especially like that the player, the casters wouldn't understand it. They think it was a bug. Oh my God, that'd be fucking hilarious.
Number 1, we have the Hook of the Master Angler. This is a trinket that had the on-use effect to turn you into a fish and allow underwater breathing and an increased swim speed. Kind of like the artifact fishing pole effect, which turns you into a fish and allows you to swim faster. Except instead of having to equip something in your weapon slot, this one only required you to equip it in your trinket slot. Yeah. Unusual for a trinket like this trinket actually didn't have a cooldown in vanilla WoW.
How I get this?
Usually all fun abilities had incredibly long cooldowns.
How I become a fish?
This one, you could just turn to a fish whenever you wanted. Well, outside of waiting 30 seconds after equipping the trinket anyway. The trinket is a reward from the Stranglethorn Fishing Extravaganza event and winning the grand prize.
Fuck that.
So not many people could get it, considering the event is only held once a week. And basically, only one person per server can win per week.
Literally
you can
never
still win
gonna
this
do
trinket
that trash.
today, but you do have to get first place in the fishing tournament.
No way.
Which is pretty difficult. Unless you're on a server that literally has no one else trying
There's
the
no
tournament
fucking way I'm gonna do that trash.
Which is doubtful, since the tournament also has a prize for an heirloom ring item.
Heirloom.
Which is an incredibly useful item.
I actually don't have
as
this
it
one.
gives you an extra 5% experience. And since the item is so useful, that means lots of people are still doing this tournament today in order to try to get one. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to win it. The first time I ever tried doing the tournament, I won 2nd place. Not good enough to get this trinket, but
nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck anymore. Like, you go over, like, on Retail WoW, there's gonna be, like, probably one other guy that's, like, fishing there, and maybe he's trying to go for it or not. Nobody gives a fuck about it anymore. It's kind of sad, dude. Like, these little fishing events used to be, like, a really big deal back, even up to, like, Wrath, they were a big deal.
But it was good enough to get the heirloom ring, which is what I actually wanted anyway. Alright, and that's it for the video. If you know of any other weird vanilla items that I missed, I'd love to hear about them, as well as ideas for future videos just like this one down in the comments.
Yep. Okay, you know what? Like, yeah, I actually, yeah, one guy who's botting. Yeah, exactly. That's true. Okay, just give me 1 second here. Okay. Oh, guys, it is 1:35, guys, which means that my internet. This is the daily fuck up, and I don't know why this happens or anything like that, but it does.
In this video, we'll go